everyone. I'm Dr. Malika K. Fowler with Malika International, seeking to make all lives actualize and inspire through kind actions. I am passionate about inspiring change through interconnectedness and taking compassionate actions towards our fellow human beings. Today, I'd like to continue the conversation with the topic on self-reliance, which is in centering with interconnectedness. I'd like to touch on the topic of self-reliance. As I mentioned to you in my last video, we started with our brief conversation, and I'd like to continue that conversation today. So the first thing I'd like to do, self-reliance is nearest and dearest to my heart. The topic of interconnectedness with subtopic of self-empowerment, self-reliance, self-development, and spiritual growth. It is by no mistake that I chose this topic to talk about. I live this topic. My life became an exchange of all of those subjects, being interconnected with people that helped me through the world, existing in this world. And first of all, I had to self-empower myself. I had to be able to be a self-reliance person, develop myself, and most importantly, follow my own bliss with my spiritual self. And that has set me on the path and where I find myself today. I'm so passionate about inspiring change through interconnectedness and taking compassionate actions towards our fellow human beings. Once and still now, there was someone who felt compassionate. The many people I strategically aligned myself with were able to connect me and help me, but I had to allow them to know that I wanted to be helped through the efforts of my self-empowerment, my self-reliance, self-development, and spiritual growth. So today, I'd like to continue the conversation of self-reliance. I'd like to talk about myself today. But before I do that, the topic self-reliance here. Basically, when you think about self-reliance starts with the human being that you are. No one would ever or can take the place of your ability to be reliable to your human willpower and soul. Ladies and gentlemen, if all else fails against your human being you are, or against your human will, the human spirit relies on its soul, which is the eternity of every human being. As always, that is all is within us. Our collective human resources becomes resourcefulness to our unique being when all else has failed us. Okay, I'd like to inject and move on with another phase of self-reliance. Frederick Douglass once said, and I'm going to read this quote from Frederick Douglass. He said, the lesson taught at this point by human experience is simply this, that the man who will get up will be helped up, and the man who will not get up will be allowed to stay down. Personal independence is a virtue, and it is the soul out of which comes the sturdiest manhood. But there can be no independence without a large share of self-independence, and this virtue cannot be sorted. It must be developed from within. That's Patrick Douglas. Let's tap into another person who speak very, very deeply with a seat of self-reliance. And who is that person? President Roosevelt. He said the worst lesson that can be taught to a man is to rely upon others and to whine over his suffering. That's deep, isn't it? That's very deep. I want to tell you a story about my own personal self-reliance. Why I'm so passionate about this subject. There's so many things that I can go from, but let me just pick from something that just come to my mind right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I was born in the Republic of Liberia. Liberia is in West Africa. Of course, Liberia became well known with the Ebola crisis. It's not that Liberia wasn't known, but again, something happened. And so the awareness now became an enlarged space on this planet. Liberia has a deep history. Liberia is the second oldest country in the world of Africa. Second oldest country in Africa, first is Ethiopia. But here's this country that have not developed to its standard of being the second oldest African country. So I want you to articulate very deeply with me. I was born in the Republic of Liberia. The rate of education in Liberia is perhaps statistically, as far as I can go back, perhaps it's less than 20%. And I need to update my statistic with that. So excuse me if I'm not exactly on the rate. So I'm born onto a Liberian mother and of course a foreign father. Here I am. I found myself in a world that this is the place I am and this is the place I'm going to grow up. My mother did not have the chance of being educated. And what did that mean? She's among the statistic of almost 80+% who did not or who do not have a direction of education. Of course, she later went on to a trade school to learn something, but life was very, very difficult. And I can go back in so many instances that I had to deeply rely on myself and align myself with people who could help me. It's that interconnection. But I remember so vividly right now, I was in the 9th grade. And my mother became very ill. What did that mean for me? My entire education would be a halt. It will stop. I will not be able to go back to school because my mother could not pay my tuition, we call it, if however you want to call it, anywhere around the world, or school fees. Simple English from where I came. My Lord. Oh, it was a moment for me. So what did I do? I looked around and saw all my friends happy, going to school. It's so deep. Whew. And I just knew. Excuse me. I knew I wanted an education, but how could I get one when I could not afford to be in school, and anyone who came from Africa understand the dynamics of which or how it works. And so what did I do? Excuse me. What did I do? I had nobody to rely on but myself. You come from a place where hopes were hopeless, and you could not turn to anyone. It's a place where opportunities are less. So it's not like, can you ask a family member? Other people are struggling just like you. And so I had to rely on myself. The first thing I did, because of wanting to remain in school and seek an education, I went to the dean for the division I lived, and I asked her if it would be okay I stay with her and help her do some work and and be able to go to school. She was very kind. Excuse me. She was very kind, and she allowed me. I'm not complaining. She had a baby. I had to help her with the baby at night. A very young teenage person. I had to stay out and help bake bread. Sometimes I'm up to 3 o'clock in the night. I'm still up there helping to meet up with what I've asked her and my commitment. And sometimes the very next day I go to school, I'm so tired, but that was what I asked of myself and asked that if I could get help, and I needed to come true with my words. Sometimes my friends who live, in a dormitory, they would come up and bring me some meal to eat. They couldn't help me because they themselves was a young person like that. The only help they could gave me was give me some food to eat. And Mariama, first name is Mariama, and Josephine. And there was another person who I became truly very close to throughout my time until I graduated from high school, Amelia Taylor Goldman. And Mariama, I believe, suggested that Amelia live in the town. She wasn't living on campus, and if it would be something I can talk to Amelia to reside with her, because I worked so hard when everyone's sleeping, and they were very sad. But it wasn't about being sad. I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't doing something that wasn't expected. It was expected because I asked that if I could reside with you, help you, and then I don't have to pack my bags and go back home. So here I am living in this place, and my friends arranged with Amelia, and Amelia was extremely receptive, and she invited me to come in the town to live with her instead of living on campus, and that entails that I would not have to be up 2 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock taking care of a baby or baking bread. As you know, didn't mean that I didn't have to help Amelia, but truly I didn't have to do anything. I just had to sleep and make some sort of little contribution, whatever necessary contribution were required of me. So I then moved into the town, and I kept myself in school until I fully, the very next year, I was able to live on my own. But that whole year, I had prayed so hard that if I can just finish the year without even dropping out, because I didn't have the money. I didn't have the money to live on campus in the dormitory because my mom could not afford it. But at some point, my mother had always paid my school fee ahead. So that part of my worry was taken away. But the part of my worry where I needed to pay to live in the dormitory, I could not afford it. And so I prayed so hard, and the year ended, and I knew if the year ended and I went back to Monrovia, I would be able to find some sort of job, or something I'm going to do to make ends meet along with my mom to be able to get back to school. Show enough. But ladies and gentlemen, why is this story so significant to self-reliance? Why is this so significant to interconnectedness? Here I am, as a very young teenager. I'm faced with a situation I have no clue about. I wasn't ready for that moment. But within myself, I had to think within myself. I had to look inside myself and ask myself several questions at that given time in my life. Yes, I have experienced other things that in a way had put me on that track to be a deep thinker, to be more cautious with things I do and how I go about doing it. So in that place, I had nobody first to do what I wanted. I had to rely on myself, and rely on myself was to allow myself a deep sense of inner peace to be able to connect with people who would have helped me. And that was those 3 friends of mine at the time. You know, self-reliance, probably self-reliance, sometimes it may appear to be a no-brainer concept to many of you. This wasn't a no-brainer concept to me. This was deep-seated, the deepest of this. It was hard, because many may think that one can simply rely upon oneself, and one is therefore self-reliance. That's not the case in all when you project it from a practical aspect, because it does go much deeper than that thought. Here is someone at a very premature stage in her life had to go deeper inside and think about self-reliance. You know, self-reliance, everyone would rightfully think the father of self-reliance is Ralph Waldo Emerson, who came up with that beautiful classic book that now lays forever and will be forever, which provides such a profound and overreaching explanation of self-reliance. You know, I think I became lost about halfway through his essay first when I read it, but I believe I understand its essence. I have lived those essence. His work surrounds the society and culture context of self-reliance. Why? I intended to speak to it on more of a personal level and within the context of interconnectedness. I'd like to give you another example about self-reliance, about my life, my place in this world. So here I am, as I explain my brief story to you. I made it through 9th grade. I made it through and graduated. So now I'm in the world. Things are going on great. I can survive. If you can survive, if you're living and breathing, great. No complaint here. There should be no complaint at all. Be thankful for life. So I am thankful for life. And let me cut to the chase right now so that we can get this moving on. So life happens. I've gone through the civil war in Liberia, and now I fled to the Ivory Coast. I became a refugee, and here I am. Then became a refugee in Danane, Ivory Coast. I then decided that I could not stay in Danane. It was a point where I would like to go to the big city and see what else is there for me that I can become a part of. And through fate and many interconnections, I made it to the Ivory Coast. Went to the Ivory Coast. Again, lots of self-reliance, self-empowerment, interconnection. In that phase of time, I found myself at the point, I found myself at a place where I have then worked so hard and smart within a short period of time. When I say short period of time, not so very short, but let's put that emphasis. In a short period of time, I have worked my way and have equally lived up to the standard, projecting what my purpose in this world would be, because I have made many promises to God along the way. My faith, not forgetting, was deep ingrained in me, and nothing I did without believing that God was holding my hands and walking with me every step of the way. Guess what happened? So now I have an opportunity to travel to a new world. I wanted more education. I wanted something that my mother, as I pointed out to you, never was basically a sat on the seat of being educated. She later on went and learned something as a trade, which then of course help us. But then just imagine what I'm talking about. You're talking about a country that is a poor country. You're talking about less educated people. You're talking about people seeking ways and opportunity to just survive. You're probably talking about people who could just live on $1 a day. Please think deeply. And there's so much that I can go back to. So here I am, working in the Ivory Coast, La Côte d'Ivoire, and I have now worked my way through that interconnectedness, self-empowerment, self-reliance. Now I have worked my way and an opportunity opened up. I'm traveling to a new world, the United States of America. And what am I traveling to the United States of America? I've always dreamt that I wanted a beautiful elite education. So yeah, I packed my bag, came to the United States, 2 suitcases with one golden dream in mind, that I wanted to be very, very much enlightened through educating myself. And education is not all academic, you know, it was just being exposed. So I came to this new world. Coming to this new world, I knew, well, family members were here. Let's be very mindful. I have family members here, but everyone come in similar fashion, especially when you've left a country, Liberia. I mean, you're coming to equally start all over. There's so much things that you have to learn. So here I am in this new world. Arrive at New York airport. I was able to go through the process, and I was able to then finally, here I am, gone through immigration. I'm in New York. I'm in America. I'm in the greatest country in the world. I stood there for a minute. I left my mother in Africa, my brothers, my sister, but I have not had 2 children. So I left my piece of my heart in Africa. I was here half person. My heart was divided. I left a piece of my heart in Africa. My Lord, here I am. The first thing before leaving that international airport, I said a prayer to God and made a promise to Him. And I did. That was the beginning of begin to self-rely on myself once more. And I remember as I traveled to the Ivory Coast as a refugee and leaving the Ivory Coast to go to the big city Abidjan, I knew that arriving in this biggest city in the world, one of the biggest cities in the world, New York, I was going to make it. So the first thing I took out of my notebook of survivor, I took that faith. My faith in God became so powerful. That was the first thing I plucked out of there. And then I began to know within myself that I had to rely on myself. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm cutting right through the chase. My journey wasn't as easy. But through the effort of my own self, through the effort of looking at the world, you know, the reality of self-reliance, that one might think that is ideal or as simple as it might reasonably sound to a person. You know, self-reliance, it became the ability for me to rely on myself, my wants and my needs. I was looking at it from the perspective of a privilege being in America. You know, it probably was not such a daunting prospect, because there is an entire ecosystem that I believe on which we are all able to rely on. And I was a part of that ecosystem through my interconnection with people who were willing to align me, to guide me, by showing to those people that I am curious. I want something. I'm humble, relying on all of those virtues that I brought through that have helped me along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, if you live in a third world country, and even if you fall seriously ill, chances are pretty good that if you are not able to rely on yourself, you may perish. And I use that very deep-seated example to the extent to allow you to know, and that is of Liberia. Remember, I briefly just hit a tap into allowing you to know Liberia, but the Ebola. Look at the Ebola crisis for Liberia. So that example fit in there in and of itself. What am I saying? We're still on the topic of self-reliance. My self-reliance in New York as my second example. Because the honest truth, it was because of those passing dark times of my youth that took me through the darkness, and I found light. Finally come to a place where I knew that this is the world that will open up for me. The light was too shining. The light was so shiny until I sometimes have to put a cover on my eyes. What do I mean? I knew that this is the place the opportunity would be endless. But the opportunity is only endless based on my interaction and based on the way I come around to connect with the right people to align me to be able to obtain the opportunity, the many opportunities I'm talking about. So go back here again. Alternatively, the example that I gave you, I said that if you live in a third world country and you seriously fall or you seriously get sick or ill, your chances of surviving is very slim. If not, you may perish. So alternatively, under the same circumstances, okay, the same circumstances, when you think about where I travel, okay, there was no denier that in that opposing phase, and one would think, what's opposing? Well, this is a new world. This is a place I've never knew. I've never been, pretty much exposed to the United States. I have made some other I've traveled a little bit before coming through my work in the Ivory Coast, working for the airlines, and through other affiliations, through the right people that simply connect to me. So in that space, I want to project that with my experience and experiences, and to someone who might just look at self-reliance out there. Self-reliance is important to bring that in, inject that in here. Self-reliance is the opposite to dependence. Simply enough. It can be rather convoluted, a convoluted proposition in a way. So then, from a material perspective, some people might have no choice but to rely on others to provide for them their basis necessities. And those are, when you think about it, those are likely human beings or souls, probably who have been subjected to a disadvantaged existence in our society, or in their society. Maybe Liberia. It's well articulated to be injected into this conversation, giving you an example of my self-reliance coming into a new world, telling you about my life experience in the Ivory Coast when I came here, how was necessary that I'm going to rely on myself to be able to make this true. I'm speaking about the opposite of that, of self-reliance, which is dependence, and clearly articulating it down to that place where sometimes it becomes people are subjected to disadvantaged existences in the society. So it's just something kind of to look at, basically. So the other thing about this self-reliance, let us view it. Let us look at self-reliance from that emotional, psychological perspective, because along my journey, there has been lots of deep-seated emotional, psychological perspective that I have found it taking up with me throughout the phases of my life, depending on myself, empowering myself. This becomes a very deep-seated matter of the heart. Because the ways in which you think and which you feel regarding outcomes, it becomes a key ingredient to self-reliance. Think about this. I had to put myself in those places. When my first example about being in the 9th grade, my second example here talking about my journey to the United States, arriving in New York. You are choosing. I had to choose the direction for my life path. So you are going to be choosing direction for your life pathway. It's going to be based upon what you believe. I chose those directions based on what I believe and think that were at my very core of self-reliance. I care so deeply with a sense of every connection with everyone who have helped me along this way to have arrived in this new world. I felt so deeply, first, about myself, as opposing to the opinions of others, optimizing self-reliance. I did. Honestly, I did. Honestly. So let me stop right here. So let me put this out to you. You may want to ask yourself, to the extent which you value your own opinion. And I did to myself, and that's what I'm saying. I'm asking you this. You value Do you value the opinions of others as compared to the extent to which you value your opinion of yourself? Oh no! You know, one of another American, I call him a inspirational speaker, motivational inspirational speaker, now spiritual teacher, Les Brown. He said, "What other thinks of you has no place in your life. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter to me. No one opinion matters to me than mine." So I ask you that question. Do you want to compare your values, your opinions, against that of others, or based on what they thought about you or think about you? No way. I wasn't going down that way. That was part of what kept me grounded. As I mentioned, I had to change. I had to adapt. I had to accept the place I find myself. I was open for that. And I had to learn to trust the space. I said that. I had to learn to trust the space so that I can let the silence of the notes become loud in that space of mine. I was at some point, and I pointed out, I said, at some point, I had to be still and know. Be still and know that I am God. It's a verse from the Bible. I had to be still, and I knew there was a God, because that's all I've had. That's all I had during the point of those days I lived in Liberia. Went moving along, becoming a refugee. Everywhere I went, the first thing I've ever opened up with is faith. That faith is an evidence of all things unseen. Well, faith, it says you can move mountains. I had nothing but that. So we said that you understand that no one's opinions matters more than yours. You know that you're not going to act more to satisfy the needs of others. You have to act to satisfy the needs of yourself. And you have to conduct yourself in a satisfactory way of your own needs. I had to do that. I had to conduct myself in a satisfactory way to satisfy my own needs and not anyone. T-line right there. Once I wasn't infringing and being disrespectful to anyone, it was my matter of my own opinion that kept me going and not what others would do. Because trust me, my mother used to tell me, when you go to the market, she said, there's lots of noise you're going to hear. She said, are you going to stop and listen to what everyone's saying? I said no. She said, then keep going. Because it's the same little concept, her little parables, something like that. So I knew if I had to stop and listen to what anyone or everyone's saying, my world wouldn't be where I am. Because I then have to interpret what every person's saying. But what was most important to me? Myself. What I thought about myself. And thinking about myself and respecting mankind. Knowing that I am here to serve was most important to me, not the opinion of others. Take that into consideration. So then give yourself this thought to the notion that nobody, I just emphasize on that. Nobody on this planet cares more about you than you do, or that you should even care enough about yourself. I've written several articles that I've listed up, put up on my Instagram and Facebook page. Nobody cares about you than you would ever care about yourself. Because that is not to say that there is no value in their perspective, but their primary concerns is probably not you or your interest at any given point in time. And this is said with such cautious put out there. Doesn't mean that you can't listen to others, but you must first of all listen to yourself. Listen to that inside of yourself, your gut feelings. And there are people there, and that's the interconnection aspect. When you have aligned yourself with people you feel and know that are in your corner, speaks your language, they're part of your tribe. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no denier. You are going to listen to some of those people because they're the ones holding your hands. So T-line right here, take into consideration the aspect of who you can listen to. But you must first listen to yourself. Bring to the table what you can speak about, that those that you have brought, that those of your tribes are able to help you along that path. Because you must rely upon you, because nobody else to any degree will, which of course will benefit you more than it will benefit anyone else. You must simply rely upon yourself if you wish to achieve any meaningful outcomes in this world. People are there to help you. People are not psychics, if you want to put it that way. People don't read your minds. Yes, if people read your mind, great. But even if people read your mind, they cannot read the nitty-gritty inside of what it is you want. So you have that responsibility to yourself, to rely on yourself, to be able to put forth your message that is necessary, that will give you a sense of yourself to connect, to have that human connection. Because sometimes having that human connections is a way where you can get yourself from point A to point B. So self-reliance through the lens of interconnection is exactly what I'm talking about. There is no way that a human being cannot rely on themselves if they truly want to fulfill their human purpose in this world. Honestly, you are the person. You are the only roadmap to your own self-reliance. You are the only true freedom that you will project to the world. You are the only person who understands what reward that you are going to get from your own self-reliance. The opening of my conversation, I quoted Frederick Douglass with self-reliance. And clarity, in that last verse he said, but there can be no independence without a large share of self-dependence. And this virtue cannot be distorted. It must be developed. It must be developed from where? He says, from within. No one has the freedom. No one has that power but you. You have that power to rely on yourself, to seek your own truth. Because as further as you are going to go in this world, achieving greatness is within you. And achieving greatness, one must realize that greatness within them must be planted, nurtured. Because that phase of self-reliance, it comes to a form of how great you're nurturing your inner being, your inner soul, your precious souls that your precious soul that has to be disciplined, that has to look at yourself, and if there's any regret it with a choice of knowing that you can become a better person. Have the moral courage to stand up for yourself, no matter how hard things are going to be. Again, stay tuned. Lots of story about self-reliance. I want to take the conversation of self-reliance and keep going back and forth with that personal empowerment and tell you real story about my self-reliance, personal empowerment, because I truly believe that it will allow you to understand from where I come. Because everyone who have ever made it in this world, somewhere in their little space, was once a student that had to learn, and then became champion to their own self. So you and I are capable of walking that stairway upstairs and making our lives, as we rely on ourselves, connect with the right people, a better life for us through every fiber of our inner being. There's no denial to that. It is all about your need to make that happen for yourself. You can pick up your broken pieces and melt them with gold. You know, the Japanese culture, things that are broken are put together with gold. That is so beautiful. No one in this world is so broken that they cannot be fixed. Yes, each of us can be fixed. But nobody's going to come and fix us. Nobody's going to take that time to take that little piece and patiently put it together as you will. Think about something that's got broken. If you throw it away, it could be repaired. If you just think about the time you might just spend standing right there, gluing it together, fixing it, putting the pieces together, is beautiful. So you can be fixed. I can be fixed. In this space, I want to say that each of us has the ability to see ourselves not as a number on this planet, but as a being that is here for a purpose, and a being that is here sometimes to defeat our state of mind that may put us into a place that sometimes we feel that it's not possible. Because I do want you to know, if you go deep down inside and relying on yourself, anything is possible. Anything can be possible through the right connection. I want to say thank you and have a very beautiful day. Goodbye.